Back at Austin Film Festival, the 26th annual Austin Film Festival, here with one of the great minds from Seinfeld, from Curb, from Veep, obviously, Dave Mandel. Dave, I want to jump into something that you talked about in a wonderful article. You said, and it times perfectly because on Monday we had the release of the latest Star Wars
trailer.
You stated that you got to see it when you were 7, back in 77.
Yep.
And that was like the perfect age.
That's my theory. Yep.
Yeah. What does it mean to know that they're closing the chapters, they're closing the realm, the world's ending? It almost feels like.
Look, I will be there. I will go see it. I don't think this is a new thought. They don't hit me the way they used to. And it's not a criticism of how they're made or anything. It doesn't bother me that they're closing the chapter. You know what I mean? In some ways, I don't know. Sometimes I'm actually maybe looking forward more to a world without Death Stars. Do you know what I mean? Like a world without, now it's time to bring Lando back, and now it's time to bring so-and-so back. I don't mean it in a bad way. I love these characters, but I have to say, like, especially after the first movie, I was almost more excited by the new characters. And so I'm, more of that.
Yeah, I think my favorite so far has been like Rogue One, which was right before New Hope.
It's interesting. I didn't love it when I saw it the first time. And this summer, I got lucky enough to go to an Academy screening where they played Rogue One into an original cut of Star Wars that George let them show without special edition. And they were really interesting in that context of back-to-back. I appreciated it way more. And as did, by the way, my son, who's 10. He dug it way more, too, I think, than when we first saw it. So that was kind of cool.
And you showed him the originals at 7, right?
I did. I actually own a print of the original Star Wars it's mine. The non-special edition version. It's what do they call it? It's an IB Tech copy. And I have that, and I have a Jedi, and I have a buddy with an Empire. And so a couple of years ago, when my kids were, I guess really when my daughter was 7, so 4 years ago, so my son was actually a little younger, but she was 7, we did over the course of a couple of months 3 screenings for all our friends with kids that same age. And it was it was about the best thing I've ever done in my life. That's all I'm going to say. That's my crowning achievement. Yeah.
And you have such a unique, because of your way of collecting things over the years, like the Ralph McQuarrie stuff, the artwork, you're so part of keeping the Star Wars world alive. One of the things that was so wonderful was I do collect the stuff, as you say. I loved it. But when they kind of gave me the opportunity to write the Star Wars sort of Ralph McQuarrie art book and really, I guess, get a chance, I always like to say, to make the book I wanted to buy, which I did with my 2 friends, Brandon and Wade. It just, to let that art be seen the way it needs to be seen. Because in modern movie making, people like Ralph don't exist anymore. Companies almost are so, I don't know what the word is, bifurcated, segregated is the wrong word, but just so, the idea though that he was sort of almost like this house artist. And by the way, not just him, you had Joe Johnston around too, and later Nilo. These guys who were in a way so talented and such jack of all trades that you had Ralph doing these pre-production paintings, and then sometimes those pre-production paintings led into some storyboarding, and then that led into some matte painting, and then because he was around, hey, why don't you take a shot at the novelization cover or the poster cover, or the poster or whatever, or we need a Christmas card. Make us, Ralph, do the Christmas card. You just don't think of there being such a house style for one movie or one company or whatever you want to think. And goddamn, he was talented. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I know you're doing the retrospective tonight. I want to jump into obviously some wonderful stuff. Writing with Andy as your director.
Yeah.
Was there anything in particular that you like to throw in there to catch him off guard?
No, I mean, Andy Ackerman was such a great director, and I tried to work with him afterwards, and I hope to work with him again. I mean, honestly, just, at this point now, in some ways, at the time, he was really my first sitcom director, and not taking anything away from anyone I've worked with since. He's still just so great. What he did, which wasn't something we would sort of really try and throw him off with, but what he really did was he took these very often, funny, sometimes very complicated, really stage plays, and the way he moved the actors in the scene, both where they went in the scene, but also the bits of business and his suggestions of them, and obviously some of it was easy, maybe like go get some cereal or whatnot, but just finding these little bits so that they could move through the scene, I think brought a real naturalness to dialogue that could often, in its rhythms, not necessarily be natural. Obviously, there were those moments of repetition, you know what I mean? The this, yeah, the this, the that, and I know that's sort of the parody version, but I think he just brought such a naturalness to it that just blows me away. And the other thing, too, because he was an editor first, everything he shot there was always a bailout point, like in the sense of, what if we cut that joke? Because we were always long, we were always shooting like 35 minutes or 33 minutes for a show that at the time had to be 21 minutes and 30 seconds. And so his ability to go, yeah, I've got a single of Jerry over here, so if you cut that, you're fine. And you get in the edit room and it just cut together so perfectly, and you could lift out what you needed to lift out to make it work. Yeah.
And I know those early episodes, like season 7, season 8, you were writing solo. Later on, obviously, with Alec and Jeff. But
even solo, I mean, the three of us were.
Well, you've known them since Harvard.
We went to school together, and so we were always looking at our stuff, and definitely, obviously, not to the degree of like co-writing, but certainly, there are sketches on Saturday Night Live that have jokes from them in it, and there are Seinfeld episodes when I didn't work on Seinfeld that have my stuff. You know what I mean? Like, very much just like a support team, even before we were formally working together. Yeah.
Is it crazy to look back on those episodes? Like, Pool Guy was early for you.
Pool Guy was
obviously
my first,
Bizarro was huge, game changing almost, and that's you. Like that. What's it like looking back and doing a retrospective on that? It's got to be surreal.
It's funny because obviously I look at the actors and I look at the show and I think about what I was like, and I just, everything seems so long ago, like just a different era. And I come to these, and I don't do a lot of these festivals, but sometimes I'll do things at schools and whatnot. And yes, most of the time they've seen Seinfeld, but it's really like I might as well be talking about I Love Lucy, you know what I mean? Or just the golden, like just some like old black and white thing they've never seen. It's weird. I mean, it's funny though, because while it is strange to look back, I will say that what I do has changed a bit, and obviously, now I'm the showrunner or whatever. Yeah. But those basic writing lessons, I mean, Larry taught me to write sitcoms. I mean, Larry and Jerry did, and Larry maybe a little more so just between that and Curb. And so the outlining process, the way I think about, I guess, a show, the way I attack an outline or just a comedy premise, it's all the same. It's all that Seinfeld thing. And in some ways, most of television was changed by Seinfeld. So it's weird to look back. It does seem like a million years ago. But if you think about it as this sort of incredible pivot point in the world of sort of multicam that felt like a single cam, and of course nowadays everything is basically single cam, but Seinfeld showed it could be a multicam but feel mature, and nowadays they don't bother with multicam because they feel like it feels old, but it doesn't have to. Seinfeld proved that. And so there's that pivot, there's that whole, the New York thing, the sort of sense of something can be niche and yet huge. I mean, it really, all comedy that follows it owes a little debt to Seinfeld. And certainly everything I do, including Veep, goes back to that. I mean, not just the relationship with Julia, but just, again, how I do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm curious about another connection.
Sure.
Veep is, I mean, obviously like show running, and you're such a part of I mean, you're the one holding the Emmy, for God's sake. It's so cool. But
not this year.
Well, I know. Kind of crazy. But a throwback to your start with Al Franken.
Yeah.
And that being political based. And,
yes.
And knowing that there was that connection and now seeing the closure to Veep, do you compare those at all, those moments?
I mean, they're different, obviously, because, I mean, you know, it's funny. When I got the Veep job, it had nothing to do with the political stuff I had done, the Saturday Night, whether it was Saturday Night Live, the early, you know, we used to call it like Indecision 92, where Al hosted the comedy coverage of the Democratic Republican conventions. I was a Gov major. That was actually my major. I mean, when I get done here, I think you know this, I'm going to the LBJ library. I mean, that's what I came to Austin for, not this nonsensical film festival. I'm hoping for a little barbecue in the LBJ library, and that's why I came to Austin. So I realize that's not everybody's cup of tea, but that's what I'm here for. So the government stuff, I guess the American history of it all is a real part of me. And I did love that. And it was different, though, because obviously, like on SNL, you're parodying these actual people. You're kind of very much working within what they said this week. Sometimes if you're lucky, you get a little bit above that and kind of could do a joke about what it all means a little bit. With Veep, because we're avoiding, you know, that guy or this guy or that woman, even though everybody always wants to go, oh, she's Hillary, she's Sarah Palin, she's Trump, you know, whatever it is. We are avoiding it, and we're attempting often to go as high up as we can. And in a way, you almost wish we were writing Veep sometimes 40 years in the future. And what I mean by that is, you want to look at something like, because, you know, we never say Democrat, we never say Republican on the show. Julia always says, which I love, that the Democrats think it's about the Republicans think about the Democrats, and I'm fine with that. I love that fact. But where I was going to kind of go with it is that we're doing this sort of politics thing where we're not trying to do Trump, but we're kind of looking and going further and going, why was Trump elected? What's going on in America? Why are there other authoritarian-esque guys getting elected around the world? What's happening in the world? And so we're never going to do a fake news joke, but what is fake news about? Why is there a, for lack of a better word, war on facts or science? It used to be if a scientist told you something, it was something. And nowadays, well, I know that scientist said something, but there's a woman on the internet telling me she went in the swimming pool and now her kids have autism. So, you know what I mean? Like, where did that change and what does it mean? And so with Veep, we're trying to kind of figure that out and do jokes about that. So when you watch it, yeah, you'll kind of go, oh, I get it. That's a little bit like your version of that. And it is a little bit of our version of Trump or something, but we're never dealing with what he said that day or that week. And SNL was a little more immediate, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know you've taken bits from each show collector-wise. With Veep, I'm pretty sure you have Grandma's painting.
Yep.
But is there anything recently you've taken from like this last season or anything that's been really...
I will tell you the thing I forgot to take, and I had to buy it in auction. Because basically... I was taking stuff, and then I went off on a family vacation. I was spring break. And what I didn't realize when I left was the auction house was coming for all of it so they could auction it off, you know, while the show was airing. And so I had to bid and win the Dubonnet lipstick that Gary puts on the coffin at the end, and I had to have it. That's a real favorite. Yeah.
What a special moment too, that last episode. The Leviathan in itself is so amazing.
He got Leviathan,
really,
which I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah. If he hadn't, I would have taken it.
Yeah, he should have just walked off with it.
Well, it was funny with Veep, and this is such an odd thing to say. I was often trying to take things, how do I put this, that maybe I added to the show as opposed to stuff that Armando created, if that makes any sense. I mean, I love the show. I was a fan of the show, but I guess Leviathan, Tony should have it, but that's it definitely is a defining of that character, but I do think of that as I got to play with this wonderful toy, but I didn't create it. I don't mean it in a bad way, but you know what I'm saying.
Do you, when you look back at episodes, do you see the difference from season 5 on compared to those first 4?
I do. We're different human beings. We have, I've gotten to know him a little bit. We don't pretend that we're hanging out 24 hours a day, but had a chance when I first took over, first emails and phone calls. I went over to London and we got to chat, and then we actually ended up meeting up. He was getting a wonderful award at one of the Montreal comedy festivals, and he and I did sort of a chat at one of the festivals. And so just his process, for the same show, our processes couldn't be more different. It's really interesting. He very much, it seems like, really explores and kind of, he knows where he's going, but yet really explores and shoots a lot and then finds a lot of it in the edit room to an amazing way, and often has multiple editors going and stuff, from what I can tell. And I am very much more everything is mapped out, and this is exactly where we're going, and this is exactly what it is. And then, we'll play on top of that. And I think we get to sort of interestingly somewhat similar places, but in crazy different ways. But when I look at it, I do think it's different. I think there are things they were better at. I think there are things I'm better at. I think, dare I say, because they were British, their knowledge of perhaps American history and American politics wasn't as deep as mine. And so I think, if you just start watching, if you're watching along and you get to season 5, you will see more references to American history, and whether you're hearing them, whether they're being name dropped, or whether or not maybe sometimes there are, what's the word I'm looking for, stories inspired by real things that happened that, I just knew about anecdotally. You know what I mean? There was one we never got in, but it was one that we were going to try and get in, which is a famous story of, what's his name, Gerald Ford, eating a tamale and eating the tamale skin because he never opened it. He never opened it. He didn't know. Yeah. And we were going to do that for Selena. Now, you have to know that Gerald Ford story, and they don't teach that in school in England. Do you know what I mean? So things like that a little bit. So that's something. It's funny. There are issues. I think I definitely, just especially because of what was going on in America, I think I leaned into race, both as an issue, both as something to sort of poke fun at, as a way of sort of targeting in a way that I don't know whether they chose not to or just whatever. And then also because it was season 5, because of all the groundwork they laid, I think got to dig into the characters a little more as characters. You started to find out a little bit more about their backstory and their psychologies a little bit in ways that I don't think you could have done it in season 2, but I could do it in season 5. And so, just for those reasons, the show's different. I like them both.
Would that be something like the way Jonah rose up in your
well, I
episode?
think that's certainly true, but I guess you mentioned the mother episode. I don't think I'm putting too fine a point on it, but there was a British writer or two that were around that didn't like the episode, didn't think that was a Veep episode. I do, so be it. You know what I mean? I think it was just not where they went. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Both, I think some of the sort of, in Selena's case, the stilted emotions, but maybe just so much about her life as opposed to just The Office. Backstory.
Well, I'd love to ask a question about what you're working on now. This unique pet thing with Alec.
It's funny. I know that's on the IMDb, but I think that's kind of it's kind of just
so
dead.
What are you doing now then?
Honestly, I don't have a great answer. I just kind of about a month ago finally got back into an office. I needed a little break. It was. I was
the
fried.
final of Veep was something special.
I appreciate that. There's that sort of sports cliche of we left it all on the field. Yeah, we kind of left it all on the field, and so I needed to recover. I needed to see what it was like to sleep in a bed again. I needed to see my family and some stuff like that. But so now I took a little break, and now I'm playing with about 4 or 5 ideas, and I bet I'll grab a hold of maybe even 2 or 3 of them and keep pushing them forward, but I haven't quite figured out what's next, but I'm working on it.
Well, we're obviously excited, but I'd love to end with a question about your stuff you have collected over the years, and a Dallas connection in particular.
Okay.
You have a motorcade of JFK.
Yes.
Can you tell me where you found that?
I was trying to think where I found it. my wife and I, when somewhere in there, she was at Tulane Medical School, and I was in LA, and she had a break, and we definitely met up for I guess, sort of weekend getaway in Dallas. And for our romantic weekend, we, of course, went to the School Book Depository, where I don't think they sold it there, but I found it soon thereafter. It may be British, believe it or not.
No way.
Possibly not made in America, yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I don't want to keep you from the thing you're here.
No, I appreciate it, yeah. Got to get to the LBJ Museum.
Exactly.
Come on.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much. It's really fun, yeah.